Hello. Today we have a Trident maple that I've been working on for a few years now. Some of you may recognize this tree on one of the forums that I'm on. And when I first got this tree, it was around this height. It had really no taper to speak of, and it was just a large canopy. Somebody had taken it at some point in time and cut it off flat, and there was just a mass of branches at the top that grew, and it wasn't really it was a pre-bonsai state. It wasn't in any kind of design state. It was just the basics had been done, had been grown for trunk girth, been hacked off, allowed to back bud, and that was pretty much it. I did an experiment on this tree and did a secondary cut on this tree in October a few years back just to see what would happen. And as a consequence, I got some dieback. But I've gotten all this lower back budding that you see on the tree now. Since then, I've let these branches grow freely. As you can see, they're really long. Established a new leader, let it grow freely so I can get a little bit thicker upper portion, so the transition from this base to the apex will be more pleasing. Unfortunately, when I did the carving to this tree, I didn't have a video camera available to me, so I'm shooting this video now. When the tree did its secondary cut in October and it did its back budding, I got a lot of dieback. I just let the tree do its thing. All last year I let it do nothing more than just grow freely. I didn't touch anything on the tree. I wanted it to establish the dieback line where it wanted to be, and luckily enough it was at an area where when I did the carving on this tree, it looks really good. I'm pretty satisfied with what happened. It doesn't always work out that way, but you just work through it. So what happened was the tree died back at just about the angle that you see here. This is actually a callus line that the tree developed by itself when it died back. And of course there was just this big knot of wood that grew up here that was dead, kind of like the hornbeam. And what I did is I employed the same techniques that I did on the hornbeam and just carved this back and created some taper. And I terminated the carvings at these branches here, here, and here, and of course at the top. And what that will do is the energy will continue to flow through these branches, which will in turn flow up to the callus area, which will in turn hopefully this one's not as rapid as my other Trident maple, but hopefully in the next 40 years, maybe 5 years, I'll have this whole back area of this tree completely calloused over like the other Trident maple that I have. So what we'll do this spring, I'm going to go ahead and do some wiring to bring these branches down. Of course you can see they're growing straight up because I've done nothing to them. I've let this tree grow freely just to maintain strength and vigor in the upper portions. Figure out where I was going to get some back budding so I can do some branch selection, and that's pretty much what I've done with this tree. It's got a great nabari. It's a nice thick trunk on at the base. Where it has died back, I think it's created some great taper potential in this area. It goes from really thick to really thin, so I may call this a sumo style. I project the top of this tree to be somewhere in this area. It's going to be, shohin size tree. But this is pretty much what I have at this point in time. A couple weeks from now, these buds on this tree are going to start popping. I'm going to go ahead today and do my initial cuts and maybe do some wiring on this tree to get the branches in the positions that I want them in. And we'll see how it turns out. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. I'm not going to bore you with endless minutes of me doing nothing but wrap wire around branches. So we'll cut from here, and we'll come back halfway through the process, and then we'll come back at the final stage of this process, and hopefully it turns out good, and we'll just kind of go from there. So this is where we are now, and we'll continue forward. Okay, here we are about halfway through the pruning and styling process on this tree. I wanted to show you this technique that I've used to bend larger branches with great success. These here are kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, they're turnbuckles. They're adjustable. They're only $1.30 at your local home improvement store, and they work really well for this this technique. What I do is I use a little piece of 1/4-inch fish tank airline tubing, and I put it around the end that's going to be on the tree, and then I put the wire through that, and I wrap it around to form a little, just a little loop, and then I twist the end, and then I attach one end of that to this side of the turnbuckle. And then I just drill through my plastic grow tub and attach the other end. And what you do is when you twist this, it will gradually over time bring this branch down, 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 down. So what I'll do is I'll give it 2 or 3 twists every week, maybe every 3 days, just depending on what time of the season it is and how brittle the branches are. Right now on these trees, the branches can be fairly brittle. Now, unlike the other Trident maple that I have, where you could, bend the branches in a circle without a problem, this one here, the branches on this tree seem to be a little more brittle than what's on the other trees. So I have to treat these a little bit differently, even though they're the same species. So this is a technique I'm going to utilize to get this branch and this branch down. I don't have another one at the moment, but I'm going to actually I have wire that's a larger gauge that will be able to bend this branch here into position where it needs to be, as well as this one. And of course the apex I don't need to worry about moving at all, because I'm going to end up cutting it back, and it'll form a new apex, just like we did on the larger Trident maple. Alright, wiring is finished. Did not have another turnbuckle, and I thought I had thick enough wire to go ahead and bend this branch down, but unfortunately I don't. So I've done something similar to the turnbuckles on this side, where I've wrapped a wire around the branch to help stabilize it and support it. And what I've done is just drilled a hole in the corner, and I've made a loop at the end with the wire and brought another piece of wire down to there, and I can gradually unravel this, pull it down, re-ravel it to tighten it up, and it kind of acts the same as the tourniquet, but you don't have to actually go out and buy anything. I like these tourniquets better because they're more incremental in their movement and they're more stable in their movement. With the Trident maples and some of the other maples out there, the branches are very brittle. If you pull just a little bit too much, it's going to snap the branch and it's pretty much done. You're going to have to grow another one from there. Another thing I ended up making a decision on with this tree is where the initial leader was. That, if you remember, it was a little bit thicker and it had a side branch. The side branch was actually a little bit higher in position on the tree than what the current leader was, and that's never going to look good. The leader is supposed to be the top of the tree, and so I decided to remove it and utilize this, which was the side branch, as the new leader. The reason I've done that as well is it follows the line of where this tree died back a little bit better as well, because it's higher up on the tree. It's more realistic when your eye follows this. It kind of follows automatically to this branch as well. I put a little bit of movement in it. I have a lot of dormant buds down here around where the cut site is from the old leader, as well as this one as well. So I'll be growing some, secondary branches from there. I believe I'll be able to get just what I need there. Now for this one, on the styling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on these branches here, growing some ramification on these branches, seeing what I can come up with there, up here as well. I'm going to let this grow freely. I'm actually going to leave this wire on and kind of cut in or bite in to the bark just slightly on this leader before I remove the wire, and I'm going to do so as well on this branch here. And what I've learned with the Tridents is what that does is it'll actually set it in place. And these things grow so rapidly in these growing containers that I have in them, in the fertilizer regimen that I have them on, that wire, where the wire has cut in and the indentation that it makes, will disappear in just one growing season. So